This is ITV1. Now, Fiona Foster investigates shocking allegations made by tribeswomen in Kenya. Are boys behaving badly? A Tonight special.
Tonight, British soldiers accused.
What the women say is that the men seem to get into a state where 3 or 4 of them would see it as fair sport to go out and ambush them and rape them.
On patrol in Africa. Are these the children they have left behind?
I've only got one friend at school. They call me names and say I'm British.
A dead girl's body exhumed. Where does the finger point?
We are treating this case as a case of murder, and we are also treating it as a case of rape.
Good evening. It's an allegation you may find too shocking to imagine. British soldiers stationed in Kenya guilty of more than 2,000 rapes over the last 3 decades. The claims first surfaced 3 years ago. Now, alongside the Kenyan authorities, the Royal Military Police are carrying out their biggest ever inquiry. If true, the allegations could cost the government an estimated £20 million in compensation. Even worse, they could shatter the reputation of the British Army. But what is the evidence? Fiona Foster has been to Kenya to investigate.
Daybreak in the African bush. Kenyan and British forensic experts travel to the burial ground of a teenage girl. As they draw near, her father asks for his daughter's forgiveness for disturbing her grave. Local police and the forensics team treat it as a crime scene. The spectacle attracts a crowd of onlookers. This is the final resting place of Mantoi Lekaloi. The victims, say her family, of rape and murder by British soldiers.
I believe it would be for them to get justice. It is very painful for a child of 15 to 16 years old being brutally murdered, and it's just like that. I think justice is the most important thing for them.
The Kenyan and British forensics teams worked side by side under a relentless sun. For 7 hours of digging, they were unsure they were looking in the right place.
It was a very hot day. At 4 or 5 feet, we started wondering actually whether we are not being misled. But the parents assured us that this is where she is. So we were very happy, very grateful when at 5 feet we found the sheet which was covering her and the figure of the human body.
The Kenyan team say DNA evidence proved the body was Mantoi's. Further forensic tests will now be carried out to determine how she died and whether she was raped. The results could embroil the British Army in one of its worst scandals for years. The Laikipia Plains at the foot of Mount Kenya have been used as a British Army training ground since 1948. Each winter, up to 3,000 soldiers from several regiments are on exercise there. That huge presence over so many years has left many legacies. And perhaps the most visible of all is this: children with black mothers whose fathers are obviously white. 4-year-old Brittany's mum, Angela, is a prostitute who works near the British Army camp. She and her best friend Frida charge just £2 a time for sex, and when the soldiers arrive, it's a golden opportunity to boost their earnings.
Yeah, when we are there in town, we start preparing, putting lipstick, changing the hair, putting artificial one, the different colors, dressing crazy. Yeah, that's what they like.
Why is it good when they come to town?
Because we make a lot of money. Even shop, curio shop, people get money from them boys. They do good business.
The Army's base camp is in Nanyuki town, home to 7 bars and 100 prostitutes like Frida.
Slap bang on the equator, Nanyuki is 4,000 miles and a world away from the UK. But just like back in any town at home, binge drinking brings with it big problems.
The night in Nanyuki was a bit like the Wild West.
Former Corporal Philip Nelson did his 6-week training tour in Kenya 3 years ago and loved every minute.
Well, my time in Kenya was probably the best time in the army. Lots of drinking, women, a little bit of fighting, but nothing too bad. Mostly fighting amongst ourselves.
But the owner of this bar says it was more than just a bit of fun, and others got hurt.
They come, they get drunk, and then we get violence and they go wild and crazy. They fight with the prostitutes and they even throw them from the balconies. I had to pay for metal grills to be put up to stop that. They'd smash up the bar counters too. So on the one hand they bring money in, but on the other it costs me money and I was losing local customers.
For years, Nanyuki was seen as a playground for British soldiers, in between their brief stints on exercise out in the Kenyan bush. But now it's virtually a no-go zone to troops. The reason? Allegations of rape made by tribeswomen living in remote settlements.
Hello, nice to see you all, guys. You okay?
London-based human rights lawyer Martin Day is acting for around 1,300 women. Their allegations of rape by soldiers date back decades.
Thank you all for coming.
He's suing the Ministry of Defence for compensation.
What the women say is that the men seem to get into a state where 3 or 4 of them would see it as fair sport to go out and find a Maasai or Samburu woman, depending on the area that they were in, ambush them and rape them.
And you're saying that it seems that the British Army were doing this for sport?
The British Army seems to have felt, the soldiers seem to have felt, that there was never going to be any comeback on them.
The victims of those alleged rapes claim their suffering goes on long after the original attacks. Women with mixed-race children are branded outcasts by their tribes. The children themselves are rejected and bullied. Rakhma's mother says she was gang-raped by 3 British soldiers.
My husband left me when he saw the white child. My life's ruined, but hopefully hers can be better.
Gerard's mother claims she was raped by 2 British Army Gurkhas. Her son's distinctive features mark him out at school.
It's hard because I'm not one of them. They don't play with me. I've only got one friend at school. They call me names and say I'm British.
And Marion's mother, Lydia, says she too was raped by a British soldier. She's brutally honest about her feelings.
She's always sick. She's a problem. She can't cope with Kenyan food, Kenyan water, Kenyan sun. You take her.
The rape allegations are widespread out in the bush, and the British military police are now investigating them. But are they true? Soldiers who've served there dismiss them as fiction.
It would be unlikely because the women, they would tend to avoid soldiers if they met them out there. If a group of soldiers on exercise, there's always at least one person in charge, and who's not going to let anything like that happen.
After a few days on exercise in the bush, the soldiers always return to Nanyuki. Women like Frida are ready, willing and cheap.
The women out there do all the chasing. The girls are throwing themselves at the soldiers. Boys don't really have to work very hard at all to get the girls.
Our own investigations have raised serious doubts about the number of rape claimants on Martin Day's books. That number rocketed after he successfully sued the MOD over unexploded munitions left lying around the British Army training areas. One of those he acted for was able to move from his 1-room hut in the bush to this 6-room bungalow in Nanyuki town. As a toddler, Joshua Stoney lost a hand when a British mine exploded. As a result, he was awarded £85,000 in compensation, or so-called boom-boom money. This in a country where the average wage is £1 a week.
I've got a brick house now. I've got cattle. I've got a business. We used to wake up hungry and go to sleep hungry. Now people see me as very important, like a god.
In total, the lawyer won £4.5 million in an out-of-court settlement from the MOD, split between 233 Maasai and Samburu tribespeople. News of the award led to an immediate and dramatic rise in the number of women claiming compensation for alleged rape.
Any of the women that we've asked to come forward who've say that they've been raped.
How directly responsible do you think the munitions money was for the number of claims you've had in the rape cases?
I wouldn't be at all surprised if, towards the end, one wasn't getting towards 100% of bandwagon jumpers, but I would be extremely surprised if in that initial groups of 100, 200, 300, there wasn't a real significant core of women that were genuinely telling the truth.
Some of the claimants openly admit to being bandwagon jumpers. Prostitutes Angela and Frida both became pregnant after consenting to sex with British soldiers. But later, both alleged rape. They now say they were encouraged to claim compensation by Kenyan aid workers, offering to split the settlement with them.
They told us we make a deal and we get more money. And we get money. We said, how much? Says 2.5 million shilling. Then we say we are raped.
I mean, that's thousands and thousands of pounds. What would you have done with that money? How would it have changed your lives?
Buy a house, stay in a good place, and I stop doing this, what I'm doing now, because it's not good. So I could make my life, I could change my life, Yeah.
You'd stop being a prostitute?
Yeah.
I find it hard to condemn them, to be frank. If I was living in the dirt poor circumstances of many of these people, well, I just simply find it very hard myself to say that they're totally wrong.
There are those who will look at this and they'll say, the tribespeople have seen what happened with the munitions payments. This is a scam on a huge scale.
Well, I totally agree. I totally agree. But I think it will be a crying shame for our own system if we allow those bandwagon jumpers to mean that we fail to get justice for the women who are genuine.
It's almost impossible for any claimant to prove their case beyond doubt. Most supporting evidence lies in the thousands of police and hospital records they've produced. But British forensic experts who've examined these documents say almost all are fakes. Anna Tepita claims she was raped back in the mid-80s.
I was taking the cattle home and stopped to get some wood for the fire. I felt something was wrong, something bad. I kept looking round, but couldn't see anything. Then 2 British soldiers in uniform grabbed me. They pushed me to the ground to do their business. They hurt me badly. Those soldiers took away my life. They killed me that day. I just didn't die.
Tribal chiefs say Anna's alleged rape was raised at a meeting with the British Army a month later. But the soldiers named in the minutes dispute this. And Anna's hospital notes are also in doubt. They say sperm was found during Anna's medical examination. Yet they're dated a whole year after the alleged attack. We read the notes to Anna. Even she agreed they were fake.
There was no sperm, no mention of sperm. I never told anyone at the hospital what had happened to me. I don't know who's written that. That's not my document. I can't read or write, so it wasn't me. I only know how to talk, and I've told you the truth.
Confusion also surrounds allegations of gang rape involving a group of women from this village in the late 90s. They claim they were attacked by British soldiers camping on a nearby ranch.
A group of us went from our village to collect firewood together. I was picking up twigs when I heard someone walking, and I thought they were going past. And then they grabbed me. There was nothing I could do. They were definitely British soldiers. They were wearing uniform.
A local goat herd says he heard the women's screams and ran to help. He says he arrived just in time to see their attackers running off.
The women told me they had been beaten by white men. I looked round and saw a young soldier running out of the trees. I went to where he'd come from and met more crying women, so I went for help. The soldiers were running to the river.
The women walked for 2 days to Nanyuki to report the attacks. According to a police record that's now been produced as evidence, an officer was sent to investigate their allegations of rape. But we've tracked down that officer, who now works as a teacher, and he says he was never given any such order.
I was sent to the ranch to stop the local people trespassing on the land with their cattle and grazing on the firing range where the soldiers were. I was based there for 3 months.
His evidence may cast doubt on the documents, but while patrolling the ranch, he says he did become aware of stories concerning British soldiers' behaviour.
The soldiers were supposed to stay in their camp on the ranch, but instead they'd cross the river and go looking for women in the villages. There were 3 things they would do. Some women consented, some were willing in return for money or big tins of food from the camp, but others were forced.
The rape claims that first surfaced in November 2002 have led to the biggest military police inquiry ever. The British authorities have so far confirmed none of the allegations, and the Kenyan authorities also view many of the women's claims with scepticism.
Basically, I would say that quite a number of them are likely to be bogus.
How many of these 2,187 allegations do you believe will ultimately be found to be true?
This case of Mantoi is the most likely to be true.
After the break, what did happen to Mantoi Lekaloi a decade ago? Her body has now been exhumed. Will the results of the post-mortem alter the course of the military inquiry?
Let's catch up with those crafty corsas! What sneaky shenanigans are these? Now what's he up to? Oh no, he's painted himself a treacherous tunnel! Savage black sucker! Flat out for the post! Uh-oh. Really flat out!
I'm not afraid of a straight vertical climb, but I was afraid to try a tiny little contact lens. That was until I tried Focus Dailies. Focus Dailies make it easy to wear contact lenses. They're made of a special material that moisturizes your eyes on contact. They're so comfortable, and they're single use. Ask your optician for a trial today. Focus Dailies. Comfort on contact.
Can Dove take coloured hair that has become dry and brittle and revive it? We asked 30 women to try it, themselves. Just washed and conditioned as they would at home. So to get that just coloured feeling back, new Dove Care and Radiance revives coloured hair.
Sky, what do you want to watch?
Imagine if we Caribbeans took life as seriously as the rest of the world.
Hello, on my mobile, can you hear me? Hello, I'll put you on hold. Maybe you speak a little louder. My phone has 3 hours battery time.
That is so yesterday.
My own have a phone book. Can you hear me now?
I'm busy. Can you call me back?
I'm going hands-free.
Made with the finest Caribbean rum, Malibu is seriously easygoing.
You silly sausage! What are you doing? Can you hear me now?
Japan will probably
I have a dream.
integration of France into our lives.
There's a new way to search. Introducing the new, more precise, more powerful MSN Search. Find it at msn.co.uk.
One bacon, egg, cheese, and a BLT bagel with an orange juice and a latte, please. I got you,
Wow! You went to all this trouble just for me. Look, I won't tell all your mates you've cooked me breakfast in bed.
I didn't. I just went to McDonald's around the corner.
You're so funny. They don't do bagels.
Yes, they do.
Oh, I love you.
New filled bagels, part of our surprising breakfast menu.
I'm loving it.
Luckily, courses have free insurance and start from $6,995.
Last week on The Takeaway, Deck finally won Ant vs. Deck. Samuel L. Jackson proved he's a twisting champion, and the boys went undercover with Jill Halfpenny, large style. The chaos continues. 6:45 Saturday, ITV1.
Welcome back. Earlier we showed the full extent of rape allegations against British troops serving in Kenya, and how many of those claims are being questioned or revealed to be false. But British and Kenyan authorities are now focusing on one case that could alter the course of the investigation. It concerns a teenager allegedly raped and then murdered by British soldiers a decade ago. Presenting new evidence in that case, here again is Fiona Foster.
In the mid-90s, Mantoy Lekaloi was grazing the family's goats on a military training range with her younger sister. She took us back to the spot where the teenager died.
My sister Mantoy was in front of the goats, and I was following behind them. I saw 2 white soldiers in army uniform a long way away. They started to come round behind us, toward me, so I ran away. One chased me and hit me hard on the back of my head. I fell down, and he stood on my arm, and it snapped. He was sitting on my back. He was raping me, and then I passed out. I didn't see what happened to my sister. When I came round, I was covered in blood. I screamed for my sister, but she didn't answer. When I found her, she was lying with her eyes closed. I called her name and tried to wake her, but I couldn't do anything.
Noldonio staggered home for help.
She was just shouting, "Problem, problem," and I could see she was having trouble walking. She said the white men had attacked them, and then she was sick. I could see her arm was broken. I found Mantoy covered in blood. I could see that she was dead. There were 2 sets of soldiers' boot prints in the dust.
Mantoy's father took his daughter's body home. She was buried the next morning, still in the same clothes.
This child of mine was good. I loved her. She was never one to ask for trouble. Ask anyone and they'll tell you she was a quiet, traditional girl.
Because Mantoy died a violent death, she was buried in a deep grave. Special funeral rites were performed to prevent her troubled spirit returning.
Since April 2003, British officers from the Royal Military Police have interviewed over 2,000 women in Kenya. Not surprisingly, their investigations are continuing. Establishing the truth, given the sheer number of forged documents, is an uphill task. But the dead can't lie. And the Kenyan forensic team believe the samples taken from Mantoy's body are now starting to reveal the awful truth of her violent death.
We are treating this case as a case of murder, and of course we are also treating it as a case of rape.
Gideon Kabunja is leading the Kenyan police inquiry into Mantoy's death. 5 months into that investigation, he's come to an alarming conclusion.
The findings so far tend to agree with the claim by Mantoy's sister that they were attacked by a British soldier.
The suspicion rests on 3 planks of evidence. Firstly, the sister's account that the attacker was a white soldier. In this area of Kenya, there are no foreign troops other than those from the British Army. Secondly, the X-rays taken of Mantoy's remains. These revealed a single long, clean break running the entire length of one side of her rib cage.
The pattern of the fracture was like a force was applied at the back. A massive force was applied to the rib cage.
With what?
What might that have been?
My guesses would be things like a boot.
Kenyan police believe this is significant. In this area, few people can afford shoes, let alone boots. Most locals make do with sandals made from old tyres. The X-rays, along with the father's report of boot prints near the body, increased the Kenyan team's suspicion that a British Army soldier was involved.
The kind of boots that these officers put on are the kind of boots that are described, and there's a possibility the injuries could have been caused by that kind of boots.
Thirdly, and perhaps most important, are the DNA tests carried out by the forensics team. Kenyan experts removed a hair from the lower part of Mantoi's body. In keeping with the sister's account, it could point to her being raped.
The hair which we got was contaminated with foreign hair. I mean, there is no better way of proving that this was rape than proving that somebody else's pubic hair was in the pubis of Mantoi.
So that would be pubic hair from her attacker?
Yes, I can say that, yes.
The Kenyan experts believe the hair is not from anyone in Mantoi's tribe. So they're now making an unprecedented appeal. They want the British to test all troops who could have been in Kenya when Mantoi was attacked.
We are hoping that with the help of the British authorities, we might be able to get some DNA samples from soldiers who may have been doing their training practices in the general area at that time. With DNA assistance, we might come to the bottom of this and possibly identify the killer, or killers if there are more than one.
The Royal Military Police say they've not yet received such a request from the Kenyans. But both they and the Ministry of Defence say their own inquiries are continuing. And all the allegations, including those surrounding Mantoi's death, will be fully investigated. Meanwhile, her family and the police believe the net is finally closing in.
It's possible that the man who did this is watching this programme. What would you say to him?
It's just a matter of time. If actually his DNA is there, it's just a matter of time and this person will be found.